Architecture is cultural. Its value is always being renegotiated, where people aren't really sure if it's good or bad, and you have to talk about it and figure it out. That's kind of the world in which we're interested in.
We're at MOS, and this is our small office space.
We don't have a stable image of what an architecture office should be like. We always say we don't really do architecture. We kind of do almost like kind of not quite architecture or marginal projects, but we're doing things like writing software, we make movies, we design art installations.
I mean, everyone that works with us has a really sort of different background. Not everyone has actually studied architecture. We've worked in the more stable architecture type office, but we're really interested in almost looking more at it as a workshop. We just finished an installation at MIT, the List Gallery. We've been working with the artist Tobias Putri on a couple of projects. So that's one thing that's just been built. We just finished also this summer the PS1 after party, the Young Architects program.
The furry gazebo.
And then we're also working on an inflatable factory.
It's for a company that makes inflatables, and it is an inflatable itself. So they wanted to make this really long span structure that's all air inflated.
I think we've had a really interesting relationship to the computer, and we're the generation that's right at the cusp where we sort of did everything drawing by hand, but computers were really coming. And so we've had to teach ourselves actually how to use all of these things.
When you think about computers in architecture, you tend to think of very glossy, curvy, blobby things. And we were interested in thinking about the digital in a much more, let's say, visceral way. So that the computer can allow for, let's say, not this idea of that we're working outside of the real world, but the reverse, that the computer actually allows you to bring in the outside world into here to test things in real time. So you can look at how things react in a physical situation. Like right now, there's a lot of people experimenting with things like 3D printing buildings. You know, there's 3D printers which will make small scale 3D prints, but there's an idea that we could do it with concrete or polymers at a larger scale and start to print out your building. So that is pretty cool.
We can now do so many things. Like, we can sit down and do engineering, or we can do all our own graphic design. So what does that mean in the future for, let's say, professions? You don't have to specialize anymore, and I think for us, we're interested in this idea of how do you work in, let's say, post-medium idea of architecture, where you're not having to declare a single concept of architecture, but how you deal with architecture as an inclusive thing, that you're constantly bringing other stuff into it.